Hey everybody, this is Mike, and this is Hijacking Reality, Part 3. Now what do we do? And, by now the cat's out of the bag, right? I mean, it's pretty evident that we're in the midst of a worldwide initiation. If you think about it, if you go into your imagination and you're like, all right, like how many stories do I know where everyone on Earth is experiencing the same thing at the same time? The only thing I could come up with is the biblical flood, maybe the mud flood. But we're going down a different line, so I'm not going to go down that path. But I find that a very, very exciting path. But nonetheless, I don't know if the biblical flood happened or what have you, but it's a story. It's a story we all know. And we are experiencing right now, that same thing. Like everyone is going, I'd be curious to know what the actual number is, or percentage, but there is a worldwide phenomenon of this kind of like quarantine and masks and all of this sort of stuff, and everyone's like on the same page. And this is initiation. There's no other way around it. And so we want to take a step further back, and this is what the first two parts of the series was about, was like kind of like looking at everything which is going on, and really kind of figuring out and seeing firsthand, like, okay, this is happening. And it's evident that there's this falsity which is being thrusted upon us in terms of a certain expression of reality. But if you look historically, if you look at the precedents of what we've seen in all of the research which has really come out in the last 20 years about what's really going on, it's always been this trickery, and we've been born into it. And now, like when we see it happen, it's fool me once, I can't be fooled again. Is that the George Bush quote? That's one of my favorite things. Where was I? We see it, we recognize it. We can see by the scale of this operation that this is a big deal. This is a big deal. This is the biggest deal we've seen to date, I would say, at least out in the open. And so we can just like reverse engineer it and say with like a high degree of certainty, by looking at how everything has been done in the past, like, yeah, there's something significant going on right now, which is greater than this falsity which has been created, because this falsity which has been created still exists within something else. And so we can go and realize that something major is happening in our environment in which we experience reality, which is greater than the particular dream which is trying to seduce the minds of so many people. And so you could sidestep that and reach the conclusion, like, yeah, this is the time. This is really it. Like, if you're alive right now, congratulations, you made it to the big show. If you're watching this video, or if you're like, your mind is not necessarily completely fooled by what is the dream which we've all been born into, that's even, you're even two steps ahead. Because this is it. Like, this is a line. Like, I'm not saying like I don't know what the future holds. I don't think anyone else does. But what we can say with very high degree certainty, that no matter what, no matter how this thing plays out, life as it was lived on planet Earth will not be the same. And so that's the truth. The truth is life is changing. What is not necessarily true is like what it's going to be changing into. And so because of that, and because we are in this position, you know, this is exciting stuff. You know, this is a good news story. So as I talked about in one of the earlier videos, is the world we live in is managed from a higher level by you know, people who follow the sky clock, and they follow the story of Western astrology. You know, whether that's true or not, you know, if you're living in the world which is influenced by Western culture, well then you know, you've lived your entire life in it. You know, regardless if you believe that to be factual or not. You know, that's just like the truth of reality. You know, if you got computers, you're watching this. If you electricity, globalism, if that's affected you, like you're involved. You're involved in, these are all Age of Aquarius type of expressions. And so, as I discussed in the earlier video, it's like, you know, one, there's like infinite expressions. You know, if you look at the archetypes, if you go and you look at the book which is put in front of you of the playbook which is being followed, you can see like there are infinite expressions of the Age of Aquarius. There are infinite expressions of any archetype, but they all share certain things in common. And so what I said was, you know, there's the infinite expressions, and what we're witnessing right now is not only are there infinite expressions, there are two like varieties, there are two camps of the Age of Aquarius expression. There's the Saturn camp and there's the Uranus camp. And just think about these as archetypes, you know. And Saturn is all like authority and control and like all of the stuff which we're seeing right now. And, you know, really what we're waking up to is a very kind of Saturnian, shadow, hidden, like this is all like Age of Pisces stuff too. It's like Age of Pisces was about the illusion. Like this is, we're seeing all of these illusionary things. We're beginning to wake up from the dream. So the good news is like, you know, if you come to the recognition that like, yeah, I'm living in this time, and this time falls underneath that umbrella. But the bigger question is like, I don't even understand where I am. Like, you know, I don't know that. I just know that I'm here. The Age of Aquarius is said to be the golden age of humanity. You know, think about that. And think about like the infinite expressions. Think about like you know, so many different ways which the Age of Aquarius can show itself. And I keep going back to that one. It's like the golden age of humanity. It's like, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I know I like how it sounds. And so recognizing right now that, you know, something major is happening, and to have this recognition, like, I mean, you know, I read people's charts, you know, I'm like I guess you'd call it like a professional astrologer, but I still always had this kind of like, when looking at like Age of Aquarius and like the larger picture sort of stuff, it felt a little bit like distant to me. You know, it's like I'm still reading like a book. Like I'm like, nothing's going to change. You know, that's what was going on in my mind. But my own personal perspective has shifted in this time, because I'm like, all right, you know, this is a real deal, like, you know, biblical flood. You know, and once you know, and we're dealing with air. I don't want to go down the too much astrology with the elements, but if you go and you look at the elements involved with those examples, I mean, it lines up as well. So nothing is done yet. You know, there's no future. We don't even understand how reality works. We're kind of waking up to this. We're all kind of groggy. And if we're at this point right now, this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about like, oh, okay, well, if I have this sort of understanding, that's hopefully what was established in the first two parts. It's like, what do I do? And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about like what makes sense to be ways of navigating this dream and this waking up process. So the first thing which we need to recognize is that the very nature of the environment which we've all been born into, you know, everything from like the household, the family vibe which you grew up in, to like the technology that was around when you grew up, to like the popular culture, all of that stuff is when you get down to it, it's immensely anti-human. You know, it's all inversion stuff. And remember, we're going into the golden age of being human. We haven't even talked about what being human is, but my favorite is the five-finger friends, five-finger family, five-finger beings. So, where was I? When we recognize that we've grown up in this environment which was giving us a second nature, it was filling our consciousness, our minds with, this is the way it is meant to be, and it's like, you know, that's just how the human being works. Is we become whatever we grow, whatever we're born into. You know, the best example is language. It's every human being born in, you know, whatever house will, within 2 years, speak the language which is spoken in the house. You know, the brain wires that way. And like, you know, there's no flashcards needed. It just happens. We just happen to become whatever it is, you know, we're born into. And we know that we've been born into a multi-layered dream to almost create this very anti-human expression, which, you know, has brought us to this exact point where we are right now. And so if you can embrace that, if you can like actually look at it and like, you know, because no one wants to think that it affects them, you know, or it's like, oh yeah, I get it, you know, I get it. But we all have huge blind spots. And the blind spot is the humility that comes in with the waking up process. Is because the entire like dream within the dream structure, the reason why it's so effective is because it's not to teach anyone that they have a blind spot. It's like, oh, I figured it out. Like, yeah, the Federal Reserve is bad, but I want to support the UN's environmental organization, you know, or, you know, it's all meant to, like, wherever you wake up from one area, it's going to pull you into another area. Those are just like examples. And so we have to they never tell us we have the blind spots. And so when we begin to accept the fact that we have to have blind spots, you know, there are going to be things that are embedded within us, within our mind, within like the development of our brain consciousness. You know, we're more than just what we're experiencing as, like, you know, these individuals right now. But for the most part, that's what we're experiencing, you know, just like, you know, your personality and your actual life experiences when you were raised. And so we have to begin to just hold on to the fact that, you know what, maybe there's parts of me that are still asleep. And this is the attitude which you want to bring into when navigating, you know, really all of reality. I mean, when it comes right down to it, we're at this point right now where we're going to, we really need to re-examine all of our reality. And this worldwide initiation, one of the effects, and I'm ultimately an optimist, you know, I'm not saying this is the truth or not, this is just what I hold on to, is like, this was designed, you know, this experience was designed, you know, bad guys included. You know, the bad guys, whether they're conscious of it or not, I suppose it depends upon the level, but they're in on it. They're in on it. And it was meant to bring us to like what we're going through right now. And so that's kind of like an idea. It's an abstract. I don't know if it's true or not. It's what makes sense to me, and I like how it feels. But nonetheless, we are at this point right now, locked in our homes, locked in with the people who at least probably spend the most amount of time with you, maybe not necessarily know you the best, but I think they probably do know you the best. And we are in these highly, highly stressful situation right now. And that is the recipe for everyone's stuff to come up. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And that is the first place we need to begin looking is, you got to begin by looking in the mirror. And, whatever is coming up, whatever the things are in your life which is causing the anxiety, whether that's in relationships, and that's usually where we're going to see most of our stuff, or whether it is in more so just how you're relating to fear and media and all this other stuff. It's all of this is coming up. Whatever is causing anxiety, stress, all of the uncomfortableness on your very personal level from this experience, that's what needs to be relooked at. Everything needs to be relooked at. I'll talk a little bit more about that, I suppose, a little bit later. I want to go on, though, to the next part. So it's it begins with the self and begins there. And then we have to go and start rethinking everything we know about life on Earth. There is a reset. You look outside right now, life on Earth is going to change. We don't know how it's going to change yet. And everything that we have experienced just wants us to go bring it back, maybe a different version, a very Saturnian Age of Aquarius expression, but it's being pulled down in there. And so everything which we know about life and the way how life works on Earth has to come into question. However, we don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's a lot of stuff which is good, which is fun about being human and about living life and how we interact. And so this is where the navigation comes in, and recognizing the blind spot is because as you begin, each person is naturally drawn to the things that they're naturally drawn to. I mean, that's one of the lies we've been told is things just won't work out. If not everyone has these very segmented roles, it's and had this very control structure. I mean, at the end of the day is people want to do what they want to do, and there's enough of us that everything's going to get done, and the things that you don't like, the other people like, and vice versa. So we're not throwing everything out, but we want to begin to go and understand, what's part of the dream and what's not. Some of it's going to be really obvious, but the technique to do so is it's not particularly difficult. All you do is you get to the root. If there's anything in question, if you want to, or if you're trying to explain it to someone else, you get to the root. You get to the history. You look at how things actually occur, and you ask yourself, is it anti-human or is it anti-earth? Because there's no separation. Anything that's anti-earth is anti-human, and anything that's anti-human is anti-earth. And so I mentioned these as an example in earlier videos, but it's computer technology. This is a really good example, and it's kind of it's dual edged, and that's why I like using this, because right now we're using computer technology. I'm using computer technology to record this. You're probably watching it, all that sort of stuff. And I'm saying right now, computer technology is inherently, it's got to go. It's got to go. It's inherently anti-human, and it's inherently anti-earth. It began from the military-industrial complex. To create all of our technologies, you have to extract these very rare earth minerals. The process to do so is not only bad for the environment, bad for the people who do it, slave labor. There's nothing which you can say about the foundation of the computer industry which is in any way supportive of the human experience, and the human experience is the earth experience as well. And so you got to say, like, computers got to go. There's no other way. We're going to use them for as long as there's not something else, because this is the thing. We've been conditioned to think. We've been conditioned to think, like, to go back in the dream. It's like, well, if you don't have technology, you're going to be a Luddite. And you could go back to living, in the Stone Ages, or you could become Amish, or you could, there's all of this stuff, which is like, everyone kind of sees, like, the benefits of our technology. It's like, you don't want the internet to go away, or more so, you don't want the things that the internet can serve you with to go away in order to access information, to access people, to do all sorts of things. Like, that's a truth. That's a good thing. But it's riding on this river of toxicity. And this river of toxicity is bringing us, you turn on the news, that's where it's bringing us. It's called the web. It's called the net. So in order to navigate, so I'm using computers as an example, and computers, and so this is the thing, this is why it's so interesting. So computers falls underneath the Age of Aquarius, because the Age of Aquarius, the true archetype, computers are not an archetype. Or, it's a smaller archetype maybe, but it's not an archetype. Like, it's not a fundamental primordial archetype. And when we're talking about ages, we're talking about primordial energies. And so the primordial energy is innovation. Doing things differently in radical ways. And innovation, like, tends to have a connotation of, like, something that's really kind of good, good in experience. So, we just need to inverse computers. It's like, I know there's a truth to computers. I know there's something which is true about the expression within the Age of Aquarius, and I know there's something true about its expression, like, I get to do things which I think are pro-human, getting information, connecting with people, sharing stuff, that's pro-human. That's very pro-human. It's just that the way it's done is not. So this is where the imagination comes in. It's really like a two-part process. A two-part process. So the first part is like getting to the bottom of something and recognizing if it is in harmony with the human experience or anti-human, in harmony with the earth experience, they're one and the same, and or anti. And if you identify it as being anti, and I'm going to suggest almost everything. Like, I go through my mind, I'm like, I can't think of anything which is part of our culture, which, at least how it's done, a part of it, which is not like out of harmony. So then once you do that, you just need to reverse the inversion. That's the idea of what you want to do. You want to reverse the inversion. And so you want to imagine, well, what would it look like if we could all, do the benefits of computers, of the internet, but in a way, how would that look if it wasn't the hardware, which I just think, my imagination's been captured. I'm like, this is what hardware is. Or hardware has to be created that way. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's created like every step of the process, not like, well, once we get it out of the earth, then we could do good stuff like this. No, it's got to be like every part of it has to be harmonious. I don't know what that looks like, but this is what the imagination is for. Like when they literally say like thinking out of the box, it's this like this cheesy cliche, but that's literally what the imagination is when there is a box which controls the vision which you hold in your head of what an expression is, and there are boundaries to it. Like, you don't know. Like, this is how like most of like lower imagination is. Lower imagination is picturing within the box. It's like, okay, let me go and imagine something, but everything I'm imagining is in the confines of something which I've already been exposed to. When I think about outer space, I think about it based upon the pictures NASA showed me. Maybe they're right. I don't know. I don't work at NASA. But maybe they're not wrong. Maybe there's a different picture. This is the imagination. And so we don't necessarily need to settle directly into like solving it. Like right now we got a lot on our plate. But what we need to begin, like the only thing like right now when you're stuck at home is to begin to just being open. I wonder what that could look like. So I was thinking about this, I was taking a walk and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the Age of Aquarius and the human family. I was thinking about that, and that really, just like those words, they feel good to me, Nothing more than that. I just like the way it makes me feel when I just think about that as a concept. And I was thinking about how we're already experienced this Age of Aquarius, expression of the human family, and that is, here's the little example I want to create for you. So I want you to just imagine. Wherever it is that you live, imagine who was living there in 1832. Think about who that person is and just kind of create this, what did they do when they got up in the morning? What was the first thing they did? What was their day like? Just kind of get into that space. And, I'm in the United States, so I'm going to be United States basis in this, Think if that guy's ever seen, someone from the Philippines, Filipino descent. Has he seen anyone from South Africa? Or she seen anyone from Africa? Or South America, Africa, Asia, Europe? Think about all of the different types of different expressions of being human, How many of those people have seen, in 1832, have seen so many different expressions of being human? Think about you. How many have you seen? That's part of being the human family. With your own eyes, the breadth of our expression. And so here's the other thing, go and ask that 1832 person, give your best Australian accent. Have you ever heard an Australian accent? Good eye, mate. We've heard the accents. We've heard different languages. We've tried different foods, on such a universal level. We've seen so many different expressions of culture that we are connected. I mean, we're already connected. This is what it looks like, I guess, to recognize the human family in a way that it has not been done before. And so we are in the Age of Aquarius, no matter how we want to look at it. So now I want to go back a little bit more to I'm going to go a little bit more back to the personal stuff, because we're right now in this initiation. So what the initiation is happening is something is breaking down within us, as an individual. There's something within your emotional, psychological, mental world which is breaking down. It's because there is so much immense pressure. There's so much pressure right now. Everyone has been put in the ultimate pressure cooker. And initiations aren't necessarily enjoyable experiences. And with all of this pressure, what it's going to do is it's going to pull out or pull up to the surface all of the cracks. And there's a big part of having these cracks come up, having all of this stuff come up and seeing it, because it's not always easy. In fact, it's not easy. The entire process is not easy. Is also recognizing, like, you know, you may be seeing the expression of it as an adult, you know, as a full-grown person, but the causes are much deeper, much older. You know, just keeping it on the most surface level stuff, like not getting into like ancestral or generational. It's like, you know, what you grew up in, what we all grew up in. You know, my senses was created, and, you know, I think that's quite evident. It was created to bring out in adults like some of the worst possible behavior sets of being human. And so the reason why that is like everything about being human like is really founded on security and groundedness within the first 7 years of development. And things need to be calm. Like everything we've done is in really the last 100 years. I mean, it really began in full like a full operation was right after World War II. Right after World War II. After you had an entire generation of like young men, like, I mean, these are dudes who are like in their early 20s, who are going overseas, and they are having some of the most horrific experiences, and like the people whose land was where the fighting was happening. But I'm focusing this primarily on a United States basis, because that's what I know firsthand. You know, these guys are coming back, and they are severely traumatized, and they came back to a new world. You know, the whole thing is like move out to the suburbs and corporate life, and like all of that began for this generation of people, of men returning, you know, totally messed up into a new world, and being forced, and like in a way which it's never seen before, in terms of being sold a lifestyle and value system. And you know, and that's not even including like, you know, changes to foods and changes to medicine and all that other stuff. But all of this started this initiation, which, you know, depending upon your age, you know, whatever you were born into some sort of part of it. You know, if you're older than 1945, a little bit different. But if you're older than being born in 1945, your experience would be a little bit different. But still, the majority of your life would have occurred since that time. And it's all of these, the sum total of everything, the sum total of culture, the sum total of foods, popular culture, of mores, of education, of lifestyle, is created within the human being. You know, it's MK Ultra. You know, it's MK Ultra is a militarized alchemy. You know, it's like they realize how the human experience works, and then it's been used against us. But it's also happened culturally in terms of like everything was done to create all of these different sort of cracks inside, and each person is you know, has their own different experience. But we all grew up in a way where the normal what could be thought of is psychological defense mechanisms. Like, this is what we do. We have experiences as during these first 7 years, and we learn strategies to find an internal equilibrium. And the more secure, the more stable, the less, the less electricity. I mean, that's part of it too. That's Age of Aquarius. Electricity, like there's cool stuff from electricity. Read Invisible Rainbow if you think electricity is our friend, but there are other expressions. Didn't want to go down too far of a rabbit hole there, but back to the development of the inner world. So the less stable, the less secure, the less safe the environment, the more the strategies need to be built. And that's just how we work. And so we've got like generation after generation of like messed up people then having children and creating, like, whether it's in the actual household or the culture. I mean, this is why it varies from person to person. It's like, you could have grown up in a very, very loving household, but you're still kind of screwed up because you're being, you're part of this culture. You're living here. You live through this thing. One of the most important, or to me, one of the most the truest sounding quotes, I like quotes, and this is one of the truest sounding quotes I've heard. I use it a lot, which is, it is not an indication of good mental health to be well adjusted to a sick society. And so there's a deeper sort of like a hidden message which they're telling you in there. And what it's saying is like, you're going to be psychologically askewed when you are raised in a sick society, whether you are well adjusted to the society or you're not well adjusted to the society. It's like, it's just going to be there. And we all have that. What are you comparing yourself to? That other version of yourself that didn't have your experiences? So it's like, we all have that within us. And what's important, and that's what's coming up, we're seeing like all of those strategies were created to avoid something. And then we build our lives. We build our lives to continue that pattern which we learned. And that's ultimately like, it's, that's where you fall is where you find your gold. Okay? Because this is the stuff which is causing all the problems. This is where it began. And it's important to realize, I guess it depends upon if you want to hold the belief that I was asked to be born in this particular time, well, then you asked specifically for this. And if you don't hold on to that particular idea, or you hold on to something else, it's like, you didn't ask for this, but it happened. It's there. That's what occurred. And here we are now. But where we stumble is where we find our gold. And that's what this initiation is affording us, is because this stuff is going to come up whether you like it or not. And the opportunity to look at it, the opportunity to understand it, possibly rewrite it, possibly pass on your wisdom, whatever it is, for it to have a new expression, to recognize that may have even been your first initiation. For that prepared you for now. Because where we fall is where we find the gold. Because as we're looking in the outer world and we have to rethink everything around us, and we have to look at it objectively, and we have to be able to recognize what is the truth, what is in harmony with the greatest expression of being human, and what is anti-human. We go and we need to have that same level of objectivity when looking at what comes up. The very things that may have been causing you all of the stress and the pressures and the reoccurring themes and the this and the that in your life, that may just be, that might not just may be, that it is. It's like that is the shadow expression of it. But some of that stuff, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Some of that stuff, it serves you. You know, some of that is good stuff. And so that is part of this initiation as well, is recognizing what did these experiences, and particularly the ones which we're conscious of, because some of us are very conscious of the things which shaped us as adults into our into our neuroses. You know, they got all these names for the natural human expression for going through large-scale cultural abuse. You know, that's the beauty of you know, we're seeing so much of the underbelly of how our world really works, going from, like, you know, whispers in the back rooms of internet chat boards to, like, on the front page, and becoming like commonly known knowledge that the world's run by sick people. And yeah, we're seeing some of the most acute stuff, but those are the same people who created our worlds, and their sickness has affected us in every way. And this is what we've become because of that. And as we become initiated in that recognition, and as we become realizing, like, well, this is who I am, and this objectively gave me these skills, this is how we get to rebrand our story. Because we're going to have to rebrand our story individually. Because the line in the sand has been drawn. Life on Earth is not going to be the same. We don't know what it's going to be. So I hope that was you know, I wasn't really planning on going too far down the psychological line, but it's really important to me, and I think it's really significant right now. And at the very least, I'm hoping to provide some sort of framework or maybe a new way of looking at this experience and then looking at yourself. And, you know, now's the time where you do the work. Now's the time where you really recognize what and who you want to be. You know, you step into yourself. So there's one last point I wanted to get into. So I did 2 points. I talked about, like, the navigating throughout the outer world and navigating throughout the inner world. And I mentioned quite a few times tonight this idea of you know, human and earth, there's no separation, and anything that's anti-earth is anti-human, and anything that's anti-human is anti-earth. And so one of the things which needs to really be re-looked at is, like, our actual relationship with the earth. And I don't mean that, like, in a big picture way. I mean, like, you know, what you do. And, you know, no matter where you are on that continuum. I mean, there are a lot of people who've got, like, listen, I got a really, really strong connection with the earth. You know, we're at a time, you know, the line's drawn in the sand. Everything is changing. Things are not going to be the same. Another video, I want to talk about how humans aren't going to be the same. That's a big thing. That's an exciting thing. Like, that's one of the stories that we are seeing. We're seeing an inversion of it, but the human being in physical form is changing too. And that should be very exciting, and this is going to be another area where the imagination is going to be a necessity. But back to connecting with the earth. At the very least, if you're not putting your feet on the earth once a day, like, that's the place where you want to start. But we want to connect with it on a deeper level. And so what I mean by that is by tapping into the human experience, and the human emotional experience, the human psychological experience, the human inner experience on the earth. And so that can be done in infinite ways. And part of what, you know, if you're familiar with some of my research and the project, the Susquehanna Mysteries, Susquehanna Alchemy, you know, you know my fondness of the river, and of the Susquehanna River. And, you know, sometimes I bump up against, like, you know, that it's a competition, or it's, you know, it's like fandom. You know, this is another thing of, like, which has been like the mirror, or the dream, excuse me, which has been funneled back into us, like this and has been inversed. The role with like associating with things, and then also like with competition, like that's been really has negatively impacted us. But there's a truth to those as well. But anyway, when I talk about the river, it's not like I'm saying this is the best river. I'm saying this is the river which is most significant to the human experience. For new viewers, I did a podcast on the Higher Side Chats in February, where I go into and explaining this idea of etheric pathways and how they are higher expressions of the neural pathway. So if you know what a neural pathway is, like we can think of rivers, you know, as the next magnitude up, or the earth magnitude of these etheric path of a neural pathway. And everything that a neural pathway does within the human, we can imagine that also like across Earth. And what we've seen in the Susquehanna mystery is how the oldest river, the grandmother river, the oldest neural pathway, the foundational pathway, has been ritualistically tied to computer technology, three-wired distribution of electricity. Even wireless electricity is not good for the human expression, or it hadn't been at least. And then also globalism. You know, those are the primary archetypes, the expressions of the Saturnian Inversion expression of the Age of Aquarius. You know, it happened, and the reason, you know, from a like a ritualistic magic perspective, you know, from the macrocosmos version of what hypnosis is to the individual, you know, it was done upon this river. And so I'm going to share this with you for two reasons. It's like this is the way which I have approached coming up with a new way to relate to our Earth, and specifically the rivers, the waterways. I mean, I would definitely suggest like becoming familiar with like whatever is in your own backyard. But that being said, if you use computers, if you use electricity, if you use anything which falls underneath the umbrella of globalism, you know, you're connected to this river. And if you don't know, if all you are connected to this river is in this artificial dream world which was created, well, you are missing a strong connection. Missing a strong connection with the grandmother river, with the oldest etheric pathway. It's the oldest river. It's where everything happened. And so I would certainly recommend, you know, for anyone who lives on the East Coast, if you can find yourself physically getting to it, doing whatever you need to do, you know, that is a wonderful way. Watch a video, understand, look at a picture. Like, this is how we work on the same realm in which the true connection, which all of humanity would have with this particular etheric pathway, this particular waterway, you know, it's been robbed. And so what I did was, and I made this years ago, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's called the Rites of the 40th Parallel. And I'm sharing this with you for two reasons. One, I think it's a fantastic tool, and I would like to be able to go and share it with as many people as I can. And then secondly, if it's not your thing, I want to inspire this as an idea in terms of, like, you know, this is how new ways of relating to the etheric pathways, the waterways in your own backyard. You could apply this also to any other sort of preserve of the natural world. So within the Susquehanna mystery, it's been identified there's a certain spot which is the epicenter, the sweet spot, or the spot of most significance. And I just so happened to be living right there. I didn't know any of this. And, you know, I was discovering this in real time as I was doing my research, and I'm seeing all this stuff from just like a research level. And then I looked. I didn't know that I lived exactly where this place was pointing to. And it's the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. And I spent a lot of time just like really going around all the different places in that area, and there's some beautiful areas. And I began to see within the natural world, just like the way things were expressing themselves, certain rock formations, certain high points, certain, everything from like even man-made stuff, like where the wind turbines are. And then also like the historical stuff, like I'm like, this is where the magic has happened. And you begin to go and look at what these expressions are, and you can begin to like boil down to the foundation of what those archetypical energies are. And so from that, I just saw that there was a certain pattern. There was like, this is representation of like all of this destruction. And this here is about balance, and this is about inspiration, and this here is about integration. And what I did is I created a book, a 26-page guidebook, where like, this is where you go to this place, and this is what you want to look for, and this is the feeling which you want to invoke, and this is like, and all you're doing is walking and looking and just kind of like being you. And this is what I'm saying about ways to connect with the world, the physical world, the natural preservation world, which we still have access to. Like, this is one of the ways we can reestablish this connection, because being human is being of the earth, and being of the earth is being human. And anti-human is anti-earth, and anti-earth is anti-human. So for anyone who's interested, and also like, this guidebook is I'm gonna get a little pitch right now. It's definitely, obviously if you can go to the Susquehanna River, if you live like anywhere from like New York to Washington, D.C., you're like an easy day trip away. But I designed this in such a way. That I created these maps. And with these maps, like in this very inspired, because it's like, everything's in play. I stole this inspiration from Disney. Disney is capturing our imagination. Well, I'm going to go take their scientifically proven techniques, and I'm going to use them myself. And I made these maps to be fun. And I highlighted all of the important places. And so the reason why is so that through the use of active imagination, of just reading this and just getting in your idea of like ways of relating with the natural preservations which are left open to us. This is a way in which from afar, from a distance, there can be a connection. There's always a connection there if you're using the internet, because you're connected through the computer, and the first computer's on the river. Here's just another way. Two other things I'd like to throw out. I found astrology to be a very, very effective tool to understand one's inner world, and then also understand one's actual connection to this greater experience which we're living in. It's the objective truth of astrology. Like, the biggest skeptic in the world, like the one thing which you can't deny is like, yeah, your natal chart is the location of the heavenly bodies, whatever they may be, that those dots that move were in a certain place in the heavens, and we know that, like, that's where your natal chart is. It says where it is. And so, as you begin to look at your astrology, and if you begin to go and look at it in terms of a subjective way, like a reading level, you're going to go and at the very least be given a map for what to look for and to better understand your world. Danger of astrology is if you give up your power to it. But we're not in that time period right now. We're not in that time period right now of giving up our power. We're becoming empowered. So my plug number 2 is I used to do starboard ceremonies, and maybe some of you have received them, and it was a way which I honored and explained one's connection with the heavens, and with I give a story. But right now that's taking too much from me. That's taking too much from me. And so I'm putting a halt on the Starboard sessions, but I'm going to start doing something new. And what I'm going to do is what I'm calling a Starboard Light. There's an intake questionnaire form. You give me your astrology, and then we talk. And what we're going to talk about is you're going to tell me what's going on in your life, like all the stuff which is going on, and then I'm going to tell you where we see it in your chart. And based upon your intake form, I'm going to show you where all of these patterns have shown themselves. You know, I'm good at patterns, so it's like I do that for people. And so that's one of the services I'm offering right now. And, you know, if this is something which resonates, you can go on susquehannaalchemy.com and, you know, you can book one of those. Then also, I've got a third thing which I want to throw out, and it's a guided meditation, and it's also on the website. And it's $6 on there, but, you know, this isn't about the money. This isn't about the money, you know. It's as long as we have that, structure in our life, and that's one of the things we need to start to think about, is like, how does money what would a system look like where money serves us? But nonetheless, you know, as long as we got money, system, and you got bills to pay, you know, these are ways which, you know, you can support me, and I can give what I think are very, very significant services at this particular time. But there's this meditation which I created, and it's amazing. I did it with an amazing sound healer called Crystal Sights, and it's an art journey meditation, and the entire purpose is to create within the nervous system, to create new neural pathways of facing fear and cultivating courage. And it's done in the coolest, most beautiful way. It's an 18-minute guided meditation, which you can get on the website. And so that's $6. You want to go and do that? You want to throw me a couple bones? That would be great. But because it's not about the money, here's the coupon code: AJ100. Put that in, see it for free. AJ100, Art Journey 100% off. It's like, this is, my life has brought me to this point, just as every single one of your lives has brought you to your point, to this point in your life. And we are at the major line. And so we want to look around at who and what's in our lives, and we want to begin to see how we can support each other. And so, as the days unfold, I think this will be very exciting. I'm very optimistic. One of the things which I've done is I've withdrawn reading any conspiracy stuff. I'm done with that. I'm not putting any of that in my mind anymore. I'm in a different place right now, and I'm focusing on people now. And so, thanks for watching, and if you watch this far, you know, good. Here's a little tidbit. I'm going to start talking more about my personal journey and what I'm going through. You know, it's a fascinating story, and you know, if you like good stories, stay tuned for that. So, everybody, thanks for listening this long. This is Mike, and until the next time.